Daniel had never thought he would end up living among the stars. Born on Earth in a small town where the night sky was filled with mystery, he grew up listening to stories about the vast galaxy beyond. The Interstellar Academy had always sounded like a dream, a place where humans and aliens studied together, learning science, diplomacy, and survival. Against all odds, he had passed the entry exams and was sent to live on Orion Station, a massive hub that floated between human and alien territories. The first week at the academy had been a whirlwind. Daniel was amazed every time he walked through the corridors. Transparent windows looked out into space, showing endless black sprinkled with stars. Alien ships of all shapes and colors came and went at the docking bays. The halls echoed with voices in dozens of languages. The sight was enough to make him feel small, but also alive with excitement. His biggest surprise, however, came in the form of his new roommate. The station was crowded, and every student was paired with someone from another species. Daniel expected a loud alien, maybe with claws or wings, someone who would try to intimidate him. Instead, his roommate was Kalith, a tall, quiet figure who seemed to float more than walk. She had pale skin that almost shimmered, silver eyes that glowed faintly in the dark, and hair so dark it looked like spilled ink. Unlike other aliens, she did not speak much. When she did, her voice was soft like music played on strings. At first, Daniel thought Kalith disliked him. She rarely spoke beyond greetings, kept her side of the room perfectly neat, and seemed to study long hours at the desk with strange glowing tablets. When Daniel tried small talk, she would answer politely but briefly. Yet despite the silence, she never felt threatening. There was something mysterious about her, as if she carried secrets from a world far beyond his reach. Daniel told himself not to push too hard. After all, humans were new to the galactic community. Many aliens still saw them as unpredictable. If Kalith wanted distance, maybe it was better to respect it. Still, curiosity tugged at him. The academy life kept Daniel busy. Classes were difficult. Alien mathematics used symbols that twisted in ways he had never seen, and xenobiology lessons often left him dizzy. But the challenge excited him. Humans had always been told they were too young a species, too reckless to belong among advanced civilizations. Yet here he was, proving that humans could learn, adapt, and thrive. By the end of each day, he returned to the dorm exhausted. Kalith would already be there, sitting cross-legged at her desk, silver eyes fixed on her glowing tablet. Sometimes faint patterns shimmered across her skin like reflections of water, but they faded quickly before Daniel could ask. He wondered about her home world. Where had she come from? What had she left behind to study here? But the questions stayed in his mind. He never voiced them. One late evening, everything changed. Daniel had been studying in the library. Hours passed quickly as he fought through alien history notes, trying to memorize the long list of galactic treaties. By the time he checked the clock, the corridors outside were nearly empty. Groaning, he stuffed his notes into his bag and hurried back toward the dorms. When he reached his room, he realized he had left his access card inside earlier in the day. Normally, he and Kalith kept the door sealed for privacy, but tonight the lock was already off. Daniel thought nothing of it. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. What he saw stopped him cold. The room was dim, lights low. In the center stood Kalith, but she looked nothing like the quiet figure he had grown used to. Her body glowed faintly, bright lines running across her skin like rivers of light. Her hair floated as if caught in invisible currents. Most shocking of all, her shape seemed unstable. Her outline flickered, shifting between solid and translucent. Daniel froze in the doorway. His heart thudded. He had seen many alien species in the academy, but never anything like this. Kalith's eyes snapped open. They glowed brighter than before, silver light filling the dim room. For a long moment, both stood silent. Daniel's mind raced. Was she in pain? Was this some kind of illness or a hidden ability? Was it dangerous? Kalith turned toward him slowly, her voice quiet but carrying weight. You should not be here. Daniel swallowed hard. His first instinct was to step back, but his feet refused to move. I forgot something. I didn't mean... He stopped, unsure what words could fit the moment. The glowing lines across Kalith's arms pulsed once, as though in response to her mood. She closed her eyes briefly and the light dimmed. Her form steadied until she looked more solid again. When she opened her eyes, the glow in them softened. You saw something you were not meant to see, she said, her tone calm but heavy. Daniel struggled for words. I didn't understand what I saw. That is the point. She looked away as if ashamed. My kind does not reveal this state to outsiders. It is private, sacred. The word hung in the air. Sacred. Daniel felt his face flush. I'm sorry. I swear I wasn't trying to spy on you. I just came in without thinking. For a long moment, Caleth did not answer. The silence stretched, filled only by the faint hum of the station's systems. Finally, she looked at him again, her expression unreadable. You did not run, she said. Daniel blinked. Run? Most who see fear. The thought hit him. She expected him to panic, to scream, to call security. Maybe that's why she looked so tense. But he hadn't run. His shock was real, but more than fear, it was fascination. Daniel took a slow breath. I don't understand what I saw, but it didn't scare me. It was different, strange, yes, but not something to fear. Caleth studied him, silver eyes glowing faintly. For the first time since they had met, her guarded expression cracked just a little. Something softer flickered there, surprise, maybe even relief. You are unusual human, she said. Daniel gave a nervous chuckle. People back home tell me that a lot. The moment hung between them. The glowing lines across her skin faded until only faint traces remained. She looked almost normal again, though Daniel knew the image of her earlier form would stay burned in his mind forever. Finally, Caleth spoke again, quieter this time. You must not speak of this. Not to the others. Not to your teachers. Do you understand? Daniel nodded quickly. Of course. I won't say a word. Her gaze lingered on him, searching his face for any sign of deception. Then she turned back to her desk, her voice low. Good. Then we shall forget this night happened. But Daniel knew he could never forget. As he slipped onto his bed on the other side of the room, his thoughts spun wildly. What exactly was Caleth? Why was her other form a secret? What dangers or truths was she hiding? The answers would not come tonight. But one thing was clear. His roommate was far more than she appeared, and Daniel had just stepped into a secret he was not supposed to touch. Lying awake in the dim glow of the station lights, he stared at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over. He had walked in on Caleth by mistake, and what he saw left him frozen. Daniel woke up the next morning feeling as if the world had tilted during the night. His mind kept returning to what he had seen. Caleth's body glowing, her form shifting between solid and light, those silver eyes shining brighter than any lamp. It felt less like a memory and more like a dream, the kind of dream that lingered even after opening your eyes. But it had been real. When he turned his head, Caleth was sitting at her desk again, quiet as always. The glow was gone. Her pale skin looked ordinary in the morning light, and her hair fell straight down her shoulders. If someone else walked in, they would never guess what Daniel had seen the night before. For a moment, he thought maybe she wanted him to forget it. Pretend nothing had happened. But then she spoke without turning around. You did not sleep well, Daniel blinked. How did you? Your breathing was restless. I could hear. He rubbed his eyes, embarrassed. Yeah, hard to sleep after that. Her fingers paused above the glowing tablet on her desk. I told you. It is not to be spoken of. I know, Daniel said quickly. I won't tell anyone. I promise. Silence stretched between them. He wondered if he had ruined everything by even mentioning it. But then slowly Caleth turned to face him. You are curious, she said. Daniel gave a small shrug. I'd have to be blind not to be. Her silver eyes studied him, searching for any sign of mockery. Finally, she sighed softly like someone giving in to a heavy weight. My kind are called Luminari, she said. You humans know little of us. We live far from your borders in regions of space your ships rarely reach. Daniel sat up, paying full attention. I've read about them in passing. Mostly rumors. The record said they didn't like outsiders. That is correct, Caleth nodded. The form you saw last night is part of who we are. But it is not shown lightly. It is resonance, the balance between matter and energy. To reveal it is to show one's true core. Few outside my people have seen it. Daniel felt a chill down his spine. And I just barged in without knocking. Her expression softened almost like a shadow of a smile. Yes, you did. They shared a brief silence, but this time it did not feel heavy. Daniel spent the next few days trying to understand Caleth better. She still kept much to herself, but sometimes her words gave hints of a deeper world. She told him her people had cities that shone like stars, powered by their own resonance. She explained that the glowing lines on her skin were energy pathways, channels of life force. If disturbed, they could collapse into chaos. Resonance is both strength and weakness, she said one evening. It gives us the ability to survive in harsh space, but it also makes us vulnerable if revealed to those who wish us harm. Daniel nodded, realizing how much trust she was showing by even telling him this much. He wanted to ask more, but he also feared pushing too far. "Why did you come here then?" he asked instead. Kalith looked at him for a long time before answering. "Because not all Luminari believe in isolation. Some of us think knowledge must be shared. That is why I study here, but it is difficult," Daniel understood. Being surrounded by aliens, each with their own cultures, was already overwhelming for him as a human. For Kalith, who carried such a secret, it must have been even harder. Life in the academy continued. Classes grew more intense. Daniel and Kalith rarely worked in the same groups, but he found himself noticing her in lectures. She always sat with perfect posture, her silver eyes never leaving the instructor. Other students kept their distance. Some whispered about her when they thought she could not hear. "She's strange, always glowing a little around the eyes." "Do you think she's dangerous?" Daniel wanted to shut them up, but he bit his tongue. If he defended her too strongly, it might only draw more suspicion. Instead, he waited until class ended and walked with her silently. A small gesture of support, she noticed. "You do not have to follow me," she said one day as they left the lecture hall. "Maybe not," Daniel replied, "but it seems better than letting you walk alone." She tilted her head slightly. Not quite a smile, but something close. It was during the second month at the academy that the first strange incident occurred. The station suddenly lost power in several sections. Lights flickered, doors stuck, and the gravity field weakened for nearly half an hour. Students panicked and instructors rushed to keep order. The engineers later explained it as a power fluctuation, something about the energy conduits. But Daniel noticed how tense Kalith became afterward. She stayed quiet, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, eyes distant. "Are you okay?" he asked when they were back in their room. She hesitated before answering. "I felt it. The disruption." The station's energy nearly fell into collapse. Daniel frowned. "Felt it? Like, physically?" "Yes." Her silver eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "The resonance inside me is attuned to energy around us. When it destabilizes, I sense it." That sent a chill through him. "So if something happens again, you'll know before the rest of us?" "Perhaps," Daniel leaned back, thoughtful. If what she said was true, then Kalith wasn't just an alien student. She might be the only one capable of detecting deeper problems in the station. The weeks that followed brought more trouble. Small items began to disappear. Equipment from labs, tools from storage, even food from the kitchens. Rumors spread quickly. Some students whispered about smugglers hiding inside the station. Others accused alien groups of sabotage, and some began to look at Kalith. "She's too quiet. She's not normal. Bet she's the reason things are failing." Daniel hated hearing it. He wanted to shout that Kalith was innocent, that she was the only reason he even understood what was going on. But he remembered her warning. Do not speak of this. If he revealed what he knew, it might only make things worse. Still, the suspicion grew. Daniel noticed the way people stepped back when Kalith entered the cafeteria. The way whispers followed her down the hall. She pretended not to hear, but Daniel could see the tension in her shoulders. One night, when the room was quiet, he finally asked, "Why don't you tell them? Why not explain what you can feel? It would help." Kalith shook her head slowly. "If they know, they will not see it as help. They will see it as danger. Humans are not the only ones who fear what they do not understand." Daniel couldn't argue with that. Still, the unfairness burned in his chest. The tension reached a peak during a late training exercise. Students were practicing in simulation pods when suddenly the power failed again. Alarms blared, and the pods shut down mid-sequence. Panic broke out as the gravity field flickered, leaving students floating helplessly. Daniel struggled to steady himself, grabbing the wall for support. Around him, others shouted in fear. Through the chaos, he caught sight of Kalith. She was still, her silver eyes glowing brighter than usual, her hands pressed against the wall as if feeling the pulse of the station itself. "Kalith," Daniel called out, struggling to push toward her. "What's happening?" She turned her head slightly. voice steady despite the chaos. The station is being drained. This is no accident, Daniel's stomach dropped. Drained? By what? But before she could answer, the lights flickered back on. Gravity steadied. The alarms fell silent. Instructors rushed in, calming the students, promising everything was under control. But Daniel saw the look in Kaleth's eyes. Calm on the surface, but deep within. A storm. Later, back in their room, he asked her again, "You think someone is doing this on purpose?" "Yes." She spoke the word without hesitation. "There are those who would break the station. I do not yet know who, but I feel the pattern. It will happen again." Daniel swallowed hard. If she was right, then the Academy wasn't just dealing with random malfunctions. Something larger was moving in the shadows, and Kaleth's secret might be the only key to stopping it. That night, Daniel lay awake once more, staring at the ceiling. His thoughts were a tangled storm. He had come here to study, to prove humans belonged among the stars. But now, it felt like he was standing on the edge of something far bigger, something dangerous. Kaleth carried a secret power, one that could either save them or draw suspicion strong enough to destroy her. And somehow, Daniel knew he was already caught in the middle. The days after the second power failure were uneasy for everyone. The Academy staff tried to calm the students, insisting it was nothing more than a technical fault. Engineers worked openly in the halls, checking conduits and replacing circuits, but the whispers continued. Something was wrong with Orion Station. Daniel noticed it everywhere. The cafeteria was quieter, the lecture halls filled with nervous glances. Every flicker of light, every shiver in the gravity field made students jump. And when people searched for someone to blame, their eyes often fell on Kaleth. It wasn't fair, but Daniel saw it again and again. Groups whispering when she walked by, words half hidden but sharp enough to cut. She was calm during the blackout. Too calm. She's not like us. She doesn't even eat normal food. Maybe she's behind it. Maybe her people want to test us. Daniel clenched his fist whenever he heard it. He wanted to yell, to tell them Kaleth wasn't the enemy. But her warning echoed in his mind. Do not speak of this. If he defended her too much, people might ask questions he couldn't answer. Kaleth, as always, walked through the whispers without flinching. Her silver eyes stayed forward, her posture perfect, but Daniel could see the tightness in her shoulders, the way her hands curled slightly when the whispers grew louder. He hated it. One evening, Daniel sat at his desk, trying to focus on a pile of history notes. The words blurred together. He glanced across the room at Kaleth. She sat still, eyes fixed on her glowing tablet. For a moment, the silence stretched between them. Finally, he spoke. They're wrong about you. Kaleth's eyes lifted slowly. You cannot stop people from fearing what they do not understand. But I can stop them from blaming you, Daniel said firmly. Her gaze lingered on him, unreadable. And how will you do that? Daniel hesitated. He didn't have an answer. He wasn't strong enough to silence everyone. But he couldn't just sit by. Then I'll find out who's really doing this. Someone's causing these malfunctions. If I can prove it, they'll leave you alone. For the first time in weeks, Kaleth's expression shifted. The faintest flicker of something. Surprise, maybe even respect. You would put yourself in danger for me? Daniel gave a half smile. I guess I would. Call it bad human instincts. Kaleth shook her head softly. Or perhaps courage. Over the next few days, Daniel began to pay more attention to the station around him. He noticed patterns in the malfunctions. The power failures always happened late in the cycle, when most of the instructors were busy in their offices. Equipment went missing from storage rooms near the engineering decks, far from the student dorms. He started asking quiet questions, careful not to sound suspicious. A maintenance worker mentioned tools disappearing right after a blackout. A cafeteria staff member whispered that the kitchen generators had been tampered with. It wasn't random. Someone was deliberately targeting the station, but who? One night, Daniel stayed up late, pretending to study. Kaleth was at her desk, quiet as always. When the lights flickered faintly, she stiffened. You felt that, didn't you? Daniel asked. Her silver eyes glowed softly. Yes, it is small, but it comes from the lower decks. Something is feeding on the station's flow of energy. Daniel grabbed his jacket. Then we should check it out. Kaleth frowned. It is dangerous. I know. He hesitated, then added, but if we don't, people will keep blaming you. For a moment, she said nothing. Then with a slow breath she stood. Very well, but you stay close. The corridors of Orion Station were quiet at night. Most students were asleep, and only the hum of the station filled the silence. Daniel followed Kaleth down to the engineering decks. The air grew cooler, the lights dimmer. Pipes lined the walls and the smell of heated metal clung to the air. Kaleth moved gracefully, her steps almost soundless. Daniel tried to do the same, though his boots echoed more than he liked. They reached a section marked Restricted. The door panel flickered as if it had been tampered with. Kaleth touched the surface lightly, her eyes narrowing. Energy residue, she whispered. Someone forced it open, Daniel swallowed. Then they're inside. She nodded once, then pushed the door open. Inside, the room was dim. Rows of energy conduits glowed faintly, pulsing with the lifeblood of the station. But in the center stood 3 figures cloaked in dark suits. They worked quickly with stolen tools, attaching strange devices to the conduits. Daniel's breath caught. Mercenaries. One of them looked up, and for a brief second their eyes met. "Run!" Kaleth hissed, but it was too late. The mercenaries lunged forward, weapons glowing in their hands. Chaos exploded in the room. Daniel ducked as a blast of energy struck the wall behind him. Sparks flew. He scrambled for cover, heart racing. Kaleth stood tall, her silver eyes blazing. The faint glow returned to her skin, lines of light tracing across her arms. With a sudden motion, she raised her hands and the air seemed to pulse. The mercenaries stumbled as the energy around them wavered. Daniel stared, frozen. She was revealing part of her true form. Not fully, but enough that the glow lit the room like fireflies. One mercenary shouted, "It's her! She's the source!" Kaleth's voice rang clear. "Leave this place. You do not belong here," but the mercenaries didn't retreat. They steadied themselves and fired again. Daniel's instincts kicked in. He grabbed a loose pipe from the floor and swung it, knocking one mercenary's weapon aside. The alien snarled, but the distraction gave Kaleth the opening she needed. Her glow surged brighter and the devices attached to the conduit sparked violently. The mercenaries panicked. "Fall back!" one shouted. They scrambled for the door, vanishing into the shadows. Silence returned, broken only by Daniel's heavy breathing. He looked at Kaleth. The glow around her dimmed slowly, fading until she appeared solid again. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. Daniel swallowed. They were stealing the station's energy. Yes. Her voice was quiet. They will return, and when they do, they will not come quietly. The next day, news spread fast. Another blackout had occurred in the engineering decks. The staff blamed a minor malfunction, but rumors grew wild among the students. And once again, suspicion turned toward Kaleth. She was seen near the engineering levels. Of course she was. Who else could do this? She's dangerous. She should be sent away. Daniel clenched his fists. The mercenaries were the real culprits, but no one wanted to believe it. Kaleth refused to defend herself, staying silent as the whispers grew sharper. That evening, Daniel confronted her. "You can't just let them blame you." Kaleth's silver eyes met his, calm but tired. "If I reveal the truth, they will only fear me more. You saw how the mercenaries reacted. They know what I am. Others would too." Daniel shook his head. "So what, you saved the station? You scared those mercenaries off." Her gaze softened. "And what did you feel, Daniel, when you saw me glowing? Did you not fear?" Daniel hesitated. The truth was, in that moment, he had been frozen, not out of fear but out of awe. "I didn't fear," he said finally. "I was amazed." Kaleth tilted her head slightly as though weighing his words. Then she said softly, "Perhaps that is why I trust you." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He replayed the scene in the engineering room again and again. The mercenaries, the stolen energy, Kaleth's glow. The station wasn't just malfunctioning, it was under attack. And unless someone stopped it, the academy would be destroyed. But how could he convince anyone without exposing Kaleth? As he stared at the ceiling, he realized something. If no one else would believe, then it was up to him and Kaleth. Together, they would have to uncover the mercenaries' plan, protect the station, and prove Kaleth's innocence. He clenched his fists with determination. Humans were new to the galaxy, seen as reckless and unprepared, but he wouldn't let fear decide the future. The station felt heavier after the encounter in the engineering decks. Even though the corridors looked the same, Even though the stars beyond the window still shone, Daniel sensed a shift in the air. Kalith was quieter than usual, though Daniel wasn't sure that was possible. She moved with calm grace, silver eyes lowered, her voice only speaking when required. Students watched her with suspicion now, not just whispers but open stares. Rumors had spread like fire. Some claimed she had been caught near the engineering levels. Others said she had been seen glowing, her body strange and unnatural. "She's behind the malfunctions," one voice muttered in the cafeteria. "I heard she almost destroyed a conduit," another whispered. Why else would the academy keep her kind away from others? Daniel sat with Kalith, pretending not to hear. But the words cut through him. His tray of food sat untouched. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He stood, his voice sharp. "You don't know what you're talking about." The students nearby looked at him with wide eyes. "And you do?" one of them asked. Daniel's fists clenched. He wanted to shout the truth, to tell them about the mercenaries. But Kalith's calm voice stopped him. "Sit down, Daniel." Reluctantly, he obeyed. The whispers continued, but Kalith's expression stayed still, unreadable. Later, when they returned to their room, Daniel exploded. "Why don't you say something? Why don't you tell them the truth?" Kalith turned to him, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Because they are not ready to hear it. To reveal my resonance fully would bring more fear than trust." Daniel shook his head. "They're already afraid. And now they're blaming you for everything. If this keeps going, they'll—" He stopped himself before saying the word, "expel," or worse. Kalith looked at him quietly. "Would you trust someone who revealed such a secret? Or would you wonder what else they were hiding?" Daniel wanted to argue, but deep down he knew she had a point. The station did not stay calm for long. 1 week later, alarms rang through the halls in the middle of the night. Daniel shot up from his bed, heart racing. The intercom voice echoed, "Warning. Energy flow disruption detected in Sector 7. All students remain in your quarters." Daniel looked at Kalith. She was already standing, eyes glowing faintly. "You feel it, don't you?" he asked. She nodded. "It is worse than before. The core is unstable." Ignoring the warning, Daniel grabbed his jacket. "We have to go." Kalith hesitated for only a second before following. The corridors were chaos. Students peeked nervously from their rooms as Daniel and Kalith ran past. Instructors barked orders into their comms, but the lights overhead flickered wildly, gravity tugging unevenly at their steps. When they reached Sector 7, Daniel stopped short. The mercenaries were back. This time they weren't hiding. Dozens of them worked around the conduits, attaching heavy machines that pulsed with a strange light. Sparks flew as energy was drained from the station into their devices. "They're bleeding the station dry," Daniel whispered. Kalith's eyes narrowed. "If they succeed, the core will collapse." Before Daniel could react, a group of mercenaries spotted them. Shouts rang out and weapons lit with sharp beams of light. "Run!" Daniel shouted, but Kalith did not run. She stepped forward, her skin beginning to glow. The lines across her body pulsed brighter, spreading like rivers of silver fire. Her hair lifted, moving as though touched by invisible winds. Daniel's breath caught. He had seen glimpses before. But this was something greater. Her voice rang out clear and commanding. "Leave this place. You will not take it." The mercenaries faltered, startled by the brilliance of her form, but their leader stepped forward, sneering. "So it's true? The luminary girl. You're exactly what we came for." Kalith's glow dimmed slightly as if his words struck something deep inside. But then she lifted her chin and the light surged brighter. The mercenaries charged. Daniel threw himself into cover as blasts filled the corridor. Kalith raised her arms, and the very air seemed to shiver. The energy beams bent away from her, striking the walls harmlessly. With each pulse of her glow, the mercenaries staggered, their devices sparking. Daniel had never seen anything like it. She wasn't just defending herself, she was shaping the station's own energy, bending it around her like a shield. But the mercenaries didn't stop. Their leader barked orders, and heavier weapons were brought forward. Bolts of light slammed against Kalith's barrier, forcing her backward step by step. Daniel's heart pounded. She was strong, but she couldn't hold forever. Thinking fast, he grabbed a fallen tool and swung it at the nearest device. Sparks flew as the machine cracked. The mercenaries cursed, turning their fire toward him. Kalith reacted instantly. Her glow flared, pulling the beams away before they could hit him. Stay close, she shouted, her voice ringing with strange echoes. Together they fought, not as student and alien, but as a team. Daniel struck at the machines while Kaleth shielded them both. Finally, with a final surge of light, Kaleth sent a pulse through the conduits. The mercenaries were thrown back, their weapons sparking uselessly. Shouts filled the corridor as they retreated, dragging their broken devices with them. Silence fell. Daniel slumped against the wall, chest heaving. We did it. Kaleth's glow dimmed, fading slowly until she looked solid again. But her face was pale, her breaths heavy. No, she whispered. This was only the beginning. They will return, stronger. The aftermath was chaos. Station authorities arrived minutes later, drawn by the alarms. Instructors and security officers rushed into Sector 7, only to find shattered machines, broken conduits, and Kaleth standing at the center. The whispers began immediately. She was glowing. She fought them. Or maybe she was with them. Questions flew. Kaleth stayed silent, her face calm but distant. Daniel tried to speak up, insisting she had saved them, but his words were drowned out in the noise. The instructors pulled them aside for questioning. What were you doing here? One demanded. Why did you leave your quarters? Another pressed. And what exactly did we witness? Daniel's fist clenched. You saw her save the station. Without her, we'd all be floating in space right now. But his words were met with suspicion. Or perhaps she caused the danger to begin with, one instructor muttered. Daniel's face burned. That's not true. Kaleth touched his arm gently, silencing him. Her silver eyes met the instructor's calmly. Believe what you wish. The truth will reveal itself in time. Her quiet defiance only deepened the doubt. Back in their room, Daniel paced furiously. They're blind. You saved them and they still blame you. Kaleth sat at her desk, her glow faint but lingering. She looked exhausted, as though the fight had drained more than just her strength. They saw enough to fear me, she said softly. That is all most will remember. Daniel stopped, turning toward her. Then what do? We can't let them win. The mercenaries, the whispers, it'll tear this station apart. Kaleth lifted her gaze to him. For the first time, Daniel saw not just calm, but something deeper. Determination burning like fire behind her silver eyes. We fight, she said simply. Together. Daniel felt a chill, but also a spark of resolve. For weeks he had been caught between doubt and trust. Now there was no question. He would stand with her no matter what. The next days blurred into tension. Security doubled patrols, instructors enforced stricter rules, and rumors ran wild. Kaleth was watched everywhere she went. Some avoided her completely. Others stared with open hostility. But Daniel stayed by her side. He noticed how tired she looked, how her hands sometimes trembled when she thought no one was watching. Each time he felt his chest tighten. She was carrying the weight of the station on her shoulders, and still people doubted her. Late one night he found her standing by the window, staring out at the stars. Her silver eyes reflected the endless void. They will never accept me, she said softly. Daniel stepped beside her. Then we'll make them. We'll show them the truth. Her gaze turned to him. For a long moment neither spoke. Then slowly she nodded. The calm did not last. 2 nights later, the station shook with another surge. Alarms screamed, and the intercom blared warnings of core instability. Daniel felt the floor tremble beneath his feet as he ran with Kaleth toward the control center. When they arrived, chaos reigned. Engineers shouted, systems sparked, and the great energy core at the center of the room pulsed wildly, on the verge of collapse. Daniel's stomach dropped. If the core failed, the entire station would be torn apart. The engineers worked frantically, but nothing stabilized it. One shouted in panic, "We can't stop it!" And then Kaleth stepped forward. Her glow surged, brighter than Daniel had ever seen. The room lit like a second sun. Gasps filled the chamber as everyone turned, eyes wide with shock. She raised her hands, her body shifting, luminous and radiant. The resonance flowed through her, lines of silver fire racing across her form. She looked both alien and beautiful, a living flame of light. "Stand back," she said, her voice carrying echoes. "I will hold it." The engineers hesitated. Some backed away in fear. Others froze in awe. Daniel's heart pounded as he watched her step closer to the unstable core, her glow merging with its wild pulses. He knew the truth in that moment. She was risking everything, not just her secret but her life. and if she failed, the station would die with her. The energy core roared like a living storm. Waves of unstable power surged against the walls, shaking the control chamber with each pulse. Engineers scrambled at their stations, alarms blaring, sparks flying from panels. At the center stood Kalith. Her glow burned brighter than Daniel had ever seen before. Lines of silver light pulsed across her skin, flowing outward like rivers of fire. Her hair lifted in a weightless aura, strands shimmering with energy. Her silver eyes were no longer calm. They were blazing suns locked on the raging core. Every time the core shuddered, her glow expanded to meet it, matching its wild rhythm. But it was not enough. Daniel could see the strain on her face, the trembling in her arms as she reached forward, hands outstretched toward the unstable heart of the station. The lead engineer shouted above the noise. "She's feeding resonance into the core, she's stabilizing it." Another voice answered, sharp with fear. "Or she's making it worse." Daniel's fists tightened. "She's saving you. Open your eyes!" But no one looked at him. Their eyes were locked on Kalith, half in awe, half in terror. Then, the mercenaries arrived. A blast echoed from the far doors as armored figures stormed inside. Their leader strode at the front, weapon glowing with cruel light. His voice cut through the chaos. "Step away from the core. She belongs to us." Daniel's heart sank, of course. The mercenaries hadn't given up. They wanted Kalith, and they wanted the station broken. Kalith didn't move. Her glow only grew brighter, focused fully on the unstable energy before her. Daniel realized the truth in an instant. She couldn't defend herself now. Her entire strength was locked into holding the core together. That left only him. The mercenaries advanced, weapons raised. Daniel snatched up a fallen metal rod from the floor. His palms sweated as he gripped it, but his steps were steady. He moved to stand between Kalith and the intruders. The leader sneered. "Out of the way, boy. You have no idea what you're protecting." Daniel raised the rod like a sword, his voice firm even as his chest pounded. "I know exactly what I'm protecting. She saved this station. She saved me. And you're not touching her." The mercenaries laughed, but there was no humor in it. The leader aimed his weapon, ready to fire. Before he could, Daniel charged. The fight was chaos. Daniel swung the rod with desperate strength, striking the nearest mercenary's arm. The weapon clattered to the floor, sparks flying. Another lunged at him, but Daniel ducked, rolling across the floor and jabbing the rod into the back of their knee. The mercenary stumbled with a grunt of pain. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't trained. But it was enough to slow them. Behind him, Kalith's glow filled the chamber, her voice echoing as she murmured strange words in her own tongue, steadying the core. Each sound vibrated through the air like music, pulling the wild energy back into balance. Daniel fought with everything he had, his muscles burning, his body bruised. He could feel the mercenaries pressing harder, trying to push past him. But each time he forced himself up again, swinging, blocking, striking back. He wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the fastest, but he refused to fall. One mercenary managed to slip past him. The man raised his weapon, aiming directly at Kalith's exposed form. "No," Daniel shouted. He threw himself forward, shoving the mercenary aside just as the weapon discharged. The beam grazed his shoulder, searing pain exploding through him. He fell to the floor with a cry. Kalith's glow flared violently. For the first time, she turned her gaze from the core, her blazing eyes locking on Daniel as he struggled to rise. Something inside her broke. Enough. The light exploded. Kalith's glow burst outward in a wave that filled the chamber. The mercenaries were thrown backward, their weapons ripped from their hands as the energy itself bent around her command. The engineers shielded their eyes, gasping in shock. At the center, Kalith stood transformed, her body no longer flesh and bone but pure resonance. Lines of silver fire wove together into a luminous form, radiant and terrible, like a star given shape. Her voice echoed with layered tones, more than human, more than alien. "You will not harm him. You will not harm this station." The mercenaries froze, stunned into silence. Their leader stumbled back, face pale. This is impossible." Kalith raised her arms. Energy surged, wrapping around the mercenaries like chains of light. In an instant, they were disarmed, bound, and thrown to the floor. The fight was over. Silence fell. The core pulsed steadily now, no longer unstable. Kalith turned back to it, her luminous form merging with its rhythm. Slowly, carefully, she poured the last of her strength into sealing the breach. Then, with a final blaze of light, she pulled away. The glow faded, dimming until she stood once again in her familiar form, silver-eyed, pale, and trembling. She swayed, nearly collapsing. Daniel rushed forward, ignoring the pain in his shoulder, catching her before she could fall. "I've got you," he whispered. Her silver eyes met his, soft with exhaustion. "And I have you." The engineers slowly rose, their faces pale with awe. One finally spoke. She saved us." Another whispered, "She wasn't the cause. She was the shield." Murmurs spread, no longer whispers of suspicion but realization. The truth had been revealed in a blaze of light none could deny. Even the instructors who had doubted so fiercely bowed their heads. Daniel held Kalith close, his chest swelling with pride. Finally, they saw her as he did. Later, after the mercenaries were taken into custody and the core fully stabilized, Daniel sat with Kalith in the quiet of their quarters. His shoulder was bandaged, aching but bearable. Kalith sat across from him, her glow faint but still lingering like the echo of starlight. "You risked everything," he said softly. "So did you," she answered. "Without you, I would not have held long enough. You gave me the time I needed." Daniel smiled faintly. "Guess we make a good team." Her silver eyes softened. For the first time, Daniel saw her smile, small, fragile, but real. "Yes," she said, "a very good team." The academy changed after that day. No longer did students whisper fear behind Kalith's back. They greeted her with respect, some with gratitude. Instructors who once doubted now asked her guidance. She remained quiet, distant as always. But there was a new light in her steps, a sense of belonging. And always, by her side was Daniel. On the final night of the term, Daniel and Kalith stood by the great observation window, looking out at the endless stars. "Do you think it's over?" Daniel asked. Kalith's eyes glimmered with silver light. "The mercenaries will return. Others will come. My kind secret is no longer safe." Daniel nodded. "Then we'll be ready. Together." She looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out, her hand resting lightly against his. "Together," she echoed. The stars stretched before them, endless and bright, and though danger would surely come again, Daniel felt no fear. For beside him stood Kalith, his alien roommate, his ally, his friend, her light burning against the dark.